Hello, ladies and gentlemen, to the late edition of the After Dark, Canadian Bowler After Dark. Apologize for the delay in getting the stream going. Some major technical difficulties on my end. Software was crashing constantly. Finally got it figured out. We're all good to go. Not our normal setup, but we've got a ton of people here to talk about the Canadian Championships, which is what we're going to do tonight. For everybody, if you like our content, don't forget to like, to share, to comment when you have questions or comments or anything. We will answer them live. We will try to keep everybody involved. So, without further ado, I will introduce everybody that's in the chat. We've got Michael Pituley, the other half of our hosting duo for tonight, another member of the Canadian Bowler family, so to speak. Next to him, we've got John Siteman, Nova Scotia rep. He is the current marketing and PR guy, if I have the title somewhat correct, for Nova Scotia province. Next to him, we have Dillon. Some of you may know him from one of our past interviews. He is the Alberta head coach. He is the regional coach for that area under Bowls Canada. Multiple-time Canadian medalist and generally good guy. We've got Mckay from Ontario. He is the current reigning and defending Canadian Force champion from 2019, since we haven't had the Canadians recently. Bowls out of Woodstock, lives in Woodstock. Great to have you on board, Derek, for your perspective.
Thanks.
We've got Carter and Brandon Watson. You might recognize them from other episodes and our Canadian Bowler podcast. Brothers from Saskatchewan, play all the time, part of our development squad under the national program. Brandon, Carter, thank you for being part of the show. All right, with that kind of wrapped up, wanted to kick this off with a general question, and I'm going to throw this out to co-hosts Mike Pituley and Dillon, since I think they're the ones in this chat that have been to the most Canadians out of everybody here. What is your feeling about the Canadians? Is it what it should be? Is it what it has been in the past, where people really want to go? The medals mean a tremendous amount to those that win it, or has it lost some of the shine over the years?
So do you want to take this, Darryl, Derek, or do you want me to jump on it?
Well, you're experienced, Mike. I'm happy for you, and you beat me last time we played each other, so I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I was gonna say to Darryl on his intro there that I am also the reigning Canadian pairs champion. Thank you.
Totally forgot.
As Derek might remember.
Well, yeah. But let's not talk about that now, shall we? No.
Yeah, to answer your question, Darryl, I would say that there's been a definite change in the Canadians, probably over about the last decade. So I've been to about 7 or 8 of them now, but I've been to many more because my family has been playing in them, and I was that little kid that got dragged along. So in my years of seeing what's happened, I've seen there been a significant change, probably about 10 years ago, or not quite 10 years ago. They changed the format. Used to be singles, fours, pairs, and then they changed it to triples, and then they've started splitting it off to a separate singles nationals. So for me personally, I see it being as a change, and it's been a negative change in my mind. I don't see it as illustrious anymore. Specifically, they've kind of cut down the amount of days. They've kind of condensed the format in a bit, and it's not quite as, I guess, long or I guess as thorough of an event as it used to be. So for me, I don't see it as high end of an event as it was about maybe 10 years ago. What do you think, Derek?
Yeah, it's definitely changed. What I kind of notice is that, it tends to be the same people all the time. So when you have generally the same people all the time, apart from a team or two here or there, then the rest of the bowls community are probably going to start to kind of lose interest, because it's the Pituley boys winning at pairs again, and they were cruel to Greg Wilson and Derek Dillon at the time. But people are sort of going to lose interest. They'll watch a bit of live streaming every now and then and what have you. But when it's the same people going all the time, it's a problem. And I know that Bowls Canada have tried changing the rules, certainly with the seniors and the mixed pairs, and that to try and get newer people to nationals. But now that the nationals is split, obviously there's cost concerns. I know, Bowls Canada and what have people, yapping in their ear about, well, gee, this is too long, it's too costly. We can't afford hotels, blah, 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 blah. So that, they're obviously been trying to find a formula for how it should work. I think my first one was, 2013. When was Vancouver? Tim Mason run the whole show. Was that 13? I think it was something like that anyway over there in Vancouver. And boy, oh boy, I thought this is a great show. This is a big show. They had T-shirts, all sorts of things going on with it. There was people everywhere because it was, fours, pairs, triples, and singles. I think all at the same time. A couple of clubs and what have you. So it was a really big show. I think it's certainly shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. And we all know the reasons for that. I just think, and probably leading into something else, that I think Canada is, for bowls, for me, is at a crossroads in regard to national championships. And well, which way do we go? Do you make it an open event where people come in? Do you not do that? Do you change the format? So like fours and pairs, are they gone? And you have and singles, are they all gone? And then because they don't lead to anywhere, the singles does, but fours and pairs don't lead anywhere apart from a national championship, obviously, which is nice to have. But does it end up a different format? Like a Premier League or something that all the provinces play and lead on to a national champion and all these sorts of stuff. So the trouble with Canada bowls right now is that it reminds me of Australian bowls about 30 years ago. Which way do we go? And really, like the Open Championships in Australia are certainly held at a higher esteem than like a national championship, like a club champion of champions and these sorts of things that they do have there. In fact, they're having them right now, I think, up in my old hometown of Mckay. And but the Open is more prestigious and what have you. You get everyone coming in, international players coming in, etc., etc. And I think Canada's at a stage where it's got to make a decision which way to go. Do people want to watch who aren't in bowls? Do they want to watch fours or pairs or whatever live streamed? And are they going to get excited about that? I don't see that happening currently. We don't have the culture in bowls in Canada that in Australia or New Zealand or in England does. I think it's got to probably change some way to get some outside interest. When something's streamed, people are saying, oh, this is different, and, exciting and, music and rah, 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 sort of going on to promote the game a bit better. But as Michael's saying, I've certainly noticed that, and maybe it's a thing of, you get a bit blasé when you go to these things as an athlete yourself. So, well, okay, no, well, yes, listen, I know, yes, who's in the list? Oh, yes, well, we've got to beat the Pituleys, and then, oh, shit, the Watson boys here, well, they're going to be easy to fix up, and then, John Siteman's in there as well, and that's not going to be hard. So it's really down to us and the Pituleys, as it's been over the last 5 years or whatever. So, but I think a decision on a wider front has got to be made. What format do we go forward with, and what promotes bowls the best?
So I want to throw this out to the rest of you guys. Obviously, Derek, you made it and you won in Burlington the last time out. Brandon, Carter, John, you've all been to a Canadians, but you're still striving to get there and win that medal. Does it still hold that, like, man, I really, really want to win that Canadian medal, or is it just in a strange place?
I would definitely think that I want to win a medal there. It's I guess with Michael and Derek is that they may have been there so many times that it's like, oh, we want another medal. I'll put that on our pile of stuff that we've already gotten. But for people like Brandon and John and I, it's one of those things that it's one of those stepping stones that we want to be able to use to, have this sort of achievement that we know that we can play up there with the big boys, right? So having that ability to have a national event that is, prestigious and that sort of way, it's still very prestigious to me. Getting to nationals is something I want to do every year. It's always something I want to get to, and it's definitely something I want to do well in. So having that ability or, path to win a medal there and have that sort of a achievement past what provincials are, and or even in open nationals like juniors even is a little bit different of a feeling than winning your way to an event. So there's that aspect as well.
And just jumping on what Carter said there, it's all relative to where you come from or where you are. Like, I remember my first second year bowling, winning a couple districts and getting to provincials, and people are like, oh, well, you don't need these district pins. I got like 40 of them for 30 of them from the years. And you're like, well, it's nice. Or the ceremony they used to have before your things, like, oh, it was nice. But like, I understand that now. Like the first time, yeah, that's kind of cool. And then it's like, okay, well, let's get on with this and get going. And then you get to a certain stage. And I mean, fortunately for me, I made it past provincials, winning that in 2019 and getting the Canadians. And now with a Canadian gold medal kind of in my hands, okay, what's the next step? And I mean, I want to be back to Canadians. I think that's the highest right now, the highest level you're going to play at in this country. But obviously I've got other things kind of now thinking forward, and it's all a process. It's not like you're going to start the sport and say, okay, we're a gold medal game at the Canadians is what I'm thinking about. No, but it's a process of getting there. So it's all relative to where you are in your development. So, I mean, if you're going every year, which is a lot easier, I recommend you to do when you're from some other provinces than it is in Ontario. There's no teams guaranteed, definitely to get there. Yeah, you don't take it for granted.
Yeah, that's where I definitely tend to agree there, because like a lot of people see Nova Scotia as one of the smaller provinces there, but like the amount of competition that it takes to get out of here, especially when like one of our main competition there every single year is always Steve Ogden and Steve Bezanson. When you have players of that caliber, it is tough to get out of this province. So like I was lucky enough in 2018, I had my first trip to the Canadians as a replacement player for someone who had to withdraw from the majors. Then 2019, we actually ended up beating Steve Ogden and Steve Bezanson in the A final to win the pairs to go in what would have been 2020. So it's like, I think personally, like as someone who's striving to hopefully get to one day play for Canada, like it's a major stepping stone to it that means a lot to try to get there, because once you get there, you're truly hopefully playing against the best of the best in this country.
I think that's totally fair. Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
So I'm kind of just hearing from the group here. So everyone has kind of said they enjoy the aspect of playing, or the honor you kind of feel of playing to get your way to the nationals. Derek did sort of touch on Canada being at a crossroads of we either maybe have to go on the way of it being an open event, or going towards kind of a different format of what we're currently doing. So I guess the opinion of all you other players here, what would you guys think is the more optimal format, moving towards more of an Australian Open, where, like John, I know you've played a couple times at the Australian Open, where you can pretty much enter in any event, just go into anything you want? Or do we need to kind of have something more towards where you're playing your provincials, getting your way there? Do you think an open event for nationals would be possible in Canada? What do you guys think?
I think it's definitely possible. At the end of the day, everyone here on this and who wants to go to nationals and play in provincials, it's that competitive juices that you have flowing in you. And one of the issues in Canada is that there's just not enough competition games to play. So like look at fours, for example, in probably Nova Scotia. Alberta's no different, maybe Saskatchewan. you play fours one weekend, and then then you don't play fours again until probably you get to nationals if you win through in the fours. So there's just not enough competition games. So I would think whatever the format, you want as many competitions as you can in the province, because that's what we need as players to improve. And certainly guys like, John Carter and Brandon and Derek, you're younger than me probably, so I'll put you in the same group. But, it's competition that people are after, and we don't have enough of that. And then, of course, everyone who goes to nationals, it doesn't matter who, they're there to win, and they want to win. Why? Because it's competition. It probably wouldn't matter if you're at the Marbles Championships for Canada. You'd still want to win and want to play and have it as a sense of achievement that you have. So certainly, depending on the competition and the format aspect, I think it's a bigger picture in regard to competition players will play in any competition, whether it's a Premier League, whether it stays the way it is, whether it's a UBC type setup or an open event. Those who love competition will always play in those events. It's what's best for the game, and how do we grow the game going forward using our national championship as a tool to grow that game, and that's the big one. But I think you could have an open event. It's tough in Canada. I know certainly in Australia, John played. I've played the open events there many years ago, of course. But and you do get plenty of people come and play in them. People will travel. People will stay in friends' houses or whatever it is to go and play in these events. You can play in large open events every weekend in Queensland. For $10,000 a weekend generally. There's no complaining about, oh, gee whiz, a hotel's going to three nights in a hotel is going to cost me more than 2 nights, and gee whiz, it's too far to travel. I can't travel and what have you. So that's what worries me about open events in Canada. There is a lot of that sort of talk about, cost on an individual / province on sending athletes to nationals, and their current structure is really based on provinces and their cost comments in regard to how they can send people or individuals go themselves to these events. That we tried the singles for a number of years there as an open event. Didn't get a heap of people going to that, even though the winner went on to either a World Cup event or whatever, or champion event, whatever they do now. But there wasn't a heap of entries. You got a few from wherever the province was, but outside of that. So that's the worry for me, is that you have a national event that is open, and people are, the culture within bowls in Canada is that they're quite cost conscious and may not attend.
Can I jump in with the aspect of going back to cost? Like in Ontario, we've went to doing fours for the last couple times before COVID, where it was just open entries before. Like, it would be like that in most provinces anyway. But here you used to have to win a district before getting there. We went open, where you could match up with players from all over the province. And again, the entry fee was a lot higher than it used to be. And just we're serious about the competition here. If you're going, it's playing to win. And it also came with more prize money out there for the players to go to help them with travel to Canadians. Do you think, and this is just throwing a question there, do you think, not that everybody's out there for prize money, if there was actually money out there to be won at Canadians, that to help cover those costs of being there, especially for those individuals or people who are representing provinces who might go every year, that would be helpful in bringing people out to play those events?
Personally, I think it would be, but the main question is that where can we get that funding?
Right.
That's the major thing, because you're not getting your $5,000, $10,000 purses with even the $100 entry fee that we have now. So it would all come down once again to sponsorship, and that's a whole can of worms there that takes a lot of time to get right.
or do you have like the teams who are going have a higher entry fee, or the province has a higher entry fee of sending teams, so there is prize money for the top ones. Easier sell in larger provinces probably, or more successful provinces, maybe we'll put it that way. But I don't know, just another thought. I mean, you're not getting, and this isn't a shot at anybody, but you got some provinces like Prince Edward Island or New Brunswick. I haven't seen a team there from those places. I mean, it's not like you're eliminating them if nobody wants to go in the first place. Like Nova Scotia players, I'm guessing probably pay that fee. Saskatchewan probably pay that fee. Ontario will pay that fee. I don't know. Just an idea.
Yeah, no, it's definite good points with the cost factor. Like in the chat, we have Ralph Ellis has commented a couple of times, and he sort of talked about originally how some of the smaller provinces, maybe that 10, 15 years ago range, used to almost treat it as a vacation type of a thing where the people would go to wherever it is in Canada, sort of treat it as a vacation, and then that you maybe would get as competitive teams out of it. And it's sort of, I guess, morphed to the more competitive teams or people taking the Bulls more seriously as the years have kind of progressed. And so I think with prize money, if you can get the sponsorships, yes, I think that's going to attract people. But I think the same problem that you saw, and Derek did touch on it, is we had the Canadian singles. We had pretty good prize money when the Canadian singles were open. The problem became with that is it became a very regional event. So Canada's a huge country. It's a lot cheaper for if the nationals are in Ontario, you're going to obviously get hundreds of people from Ontario coming out to play in it. If it's in Saskatchewan, you're going to get lots of people from Saskatchewan and the prairies. So I think with Canada, the regionality of it's going to be always a massive problem for nationals. And I think the only real way you could maybe combat that is if you maybe did regional nationals almost. But again, then you're not getting everyone from all the whole country. So I don't think there's a perfect way to really sort of run it.
The interesting thing right now is it used to be that the Canadians were on a rotational basis, and that was to be more inclusive, right? So you have it out in BC for a year, then you have it at Nova Scotia for a year, and then you have it in Ontario or Manitoba or wherever, to try to ease the pain of having to travel all the time. So if it's always in BC, are you really going to get the Maritimes in there? And if it's out there, are you really going to get people from BC wanting to go out there because of the cost? That's kind of gone out the window this year, where it kind of came to a head where Bulls Canada came out and said, we're looking for hosts. It's supposed to be here, but we don't have anybody that wants to take it, so we're taking bids from anywhere. And Michael Pituley, our beat reporter, broke the news that he thinks it's in Burlington again. So it's back in Ontario. Is there a major issue around trying to host it? The cost, the volunteers, clubs just don't want it. What are the pros and the cons that people actually get out of taking on the Canadians?
Certainly, it's a bit of the unknown for clubs, and certainly right now, the most I can see clubs worrying about is volunteer burnout. And the last couple of years has been, well, it's always tough on volunteers, but the last couple of years has been pretty tough on volunteers. And that's, I think even from a Calgary Lawn perspective, that we were having a look at it. In fact, for next year, in conjunction with the club down the road, Rotary Park. And, it was just sheer in the end. Members sort of said, well, we're volunteer weary. Nothing about the cost of it, nothing about the profit you can make, nothing about the organisation of it. It was all about volunteer weariness.
Yeah, I certainly think that it's been a little bit bad for the last couple of years because of the uncertainty of COVID and whatnot. But also, I think the Nationals itself as an event is kind of it's a big undertaking, right? So it might be a bit intimidating for clubs to try to want to take something like that on. So maybe a way of solving an issue like that is to have maybe a template of or what other clubs have done in the past in order to show them just what is all involved to these other clubs that might be thinking about it, or just to show that there is like maybe we have other clubs that have done it before, like the Regina Lumbling Club had a document that we had that showed all the different things that we ended up working on for the nationals and the problems we had and how we solved that. So maybe if we were able to send out documents like that to clubs, they may see it as less of a big undertaking because they don't have to reinvent the wheel. They can just take some of the ideas and some of the stuff that worked in the previous nationals and then just adapt it for their area. So that's a potential way of solving the huge scope of the event, that you don't have to reinvent the wheel and come up with all the ideas yourself. You can just sort of look at what's been done before and just apply it to where you are.
I'm somebody who. Oh, sorry, Derek.
No, I was just going to say, just quickly on that point, Carter. Tim Mason did a dossier of how to run a, whether you agree with Tim or not on what he did in the West Vancouver Nationals. He created a whole dossier on what he did from start to finish, organising things to think about, marketing, T-shirts, you name it, was all in the one document. But I don't know whether anyone's got that, or whether Bowls Canada have used that or whatever. But I do know.
Yeah, we had a 43-page document that I'm not sure. I think it was sent off to somewhere, but I'm not sure exactly. But it definitely, I think it's a lot of, if you don't have to start from scratch, that it removes a lot of the thinking in regards to the event itself. Certainly, you're going to have to adapt it, right? Like not everything's going to work everywhere, and you're going to have to do your own things. But if you could get ideas from how people solve these issues, then you can move it forward in your area, and maybe that would make it easier on clubs that have a smaller volunteer base or burnt out volunteers. If they realize just what's all involved, that can certainly make it easier to get into. Plus, there might be some things that they could move on into, just not necessarily have a full involvement in. So, like closing ceremonies or something like that, maybe could be run by Bowls Canada if there's a potential for that. I don't know, but just moving some of the more higher end, whatever, like say, something that Bowls Canada could run from their end, maybe that could bring it off of the volunteers of the club and allow it just to be at the club, and the people at the club are able to do what they're doing there and have involvement with that sort of thing, instead of something that may be done from a Bowls Canada perspective.
I think that's a good point by Carter about if there's something this, well, I mean, the draw is already run by Bowls Canada, but like the complicated stuff that is logistically makes sense for Bowls Canada to do, because you have somebody, a staff member or staff members on site all the time. That would help. I also think it would help if you knew a year out you were doing it again, just or planning ahead, as if that's possible. It seems like we're looking always last minute for things, but like when Regina hosted in 2018, if somebody from Burlington was able to go out there and just like for the week, be with the other person who's the head organizer, and get to wander around and just basically shadow them, that would be huge. Like there'd have to be a great comfort level you'd develop, and even you'd have the person who's organized it on site in Regina would at least have somebody else there who's probably not a bad organizer themselves if they're taking on this job in Burlington, maybe could help troubleshoot problems. It would be like a team. And the next year, then you've got that knowledge to run it in Burlington in 2019. And then the host for, well, what would have been 2020 never happened, but 2020 would have been there from wherever that was. And then they're there to kind of watch what's going on. And I mean, it'd be a program that would take buy-in from clubs that would actually, again, it doesn't really solve the problem ahead of time of being willing to host. You still haven't seen it, but you hopefully have some people at your club who are in that in leadership roles who've been around the game enough to kind of have an idea or have seen these at least as a spectator. Like in Burlington, I know having played there was tons of people from all over southwestern Ontario or southern Ontario. I'll even say that were at the event watching, like hopefully they would have picked up some things. Oh, they were doing that when I went and watched there. You don't have to participate in it to find out what's going on.
I think that's an excellent point. I really like the idea of having somebody from a club in the future that is planning to host shadow one of the lead organizers during the event. I think that's an excellent way to get experience. I think another thing that could really help clubs, and this is a different problem in and of itself, and I don't know how you solve this, but getting clubs to take the jump and possibly hire a summer student, that could really help. Having somebody that you are paying that can be working all day on some of the more mundane administrative tasks and actively being able to be a part of that rather than pushing all of that onto volunteers, especially right now when memberships across the country are down. I think that would make a big deal. I know the Regina Lawn Bowling Club, it was a big step for us. We were really kind of leery about it. We'd been thinking about it for a while. After taking that step, I don't know if we would ever go back to not having a summer student, but it's once you have somebody in a club that is on payroll and expected to do these tasks, and that you don't have to necessarily worry about, oh, they're a volunteer. How much can I expect of them? How much time can I expect of them? It's really good for opening up different possibilities.
Yeah, 100% agreed there, Brandon. Like when we held the junior nationals here in 2017, one of our absolute amazing things was the fact that we did have our summer student helping us out the whole week long. And like a lot of the stuff as simple as set up and tear down in the morning that usually, if you rely on volunteers, takes a pile of people to set up the green for the day. Like having someone like that in place really takes a lot of stress off of volunteers.
And going to, I know Alberta has, I'm thinking Saskatchewan does too, have an executive director. If they're a paid position, this doesn't help necessarily a little bit in the lead up, not with all the on the ground stuff, but during that week, I would hope that person would be available to kind of assist in some administrative and kind of directive functions. And we have an executive director in Ontario now, but I mean, that's a different story about what his availability might be with our events. But like, that's just something, again, you have staff somewhere involved in bowls. Can you utilize them for a large event like that? And how do you utilize them best? And that's a much larger and more complex conversation, but it's just something, again, to consider.
There's some good comments in the chat, and I'm going to read them out and get your reaction to them. So Ralph Ellis says, post-COVID-19, most clubs are down 20 to 28%. It's a big barrier to clubs hosting the championships in 2022. So they're obviously losing a lot of people. It'll be better in subsequent years, we hope. Ontario has some grant support for the championships, which helps, and I'm sure that some of the other provinces do as well. Probably not all of them. The problem with great hosting documents is that our people don't read documents and need to be directly coached. That's obviously a big thing.
Number one, people don't read.
Rob Gallipo, he's from Port Credit, who's going to be hosting the half of the juniors coming up, or the youth championships. So he says Jake at BCB has given them a 75-page manual from previous national championships to help them with the 2022 junior nationals. Obviously, you don't know what that contains and if that's big. And then Ralph says the BCB manual is more of what is required as opposed to how we do it. And you may need both. So here's what you need, and here's how you do it. They're not necessarily mutually exclusive.
So Darryl, me jumping in there. You're telling me there's a 75-page manual to host a Canadian championship. So just an outsider's perspective here, never hosted one, or I was lightly involved when we hosted. Is that not intimidating in itself, that you're literally being sent a document that's 75 pages long? Like, takes me probably pretty dense reading. I'll bet you a whole afternoon to read that manual just to understand what it's telling me. So is it kind of coming to a point that I'd think if you're giving out a 75-page manual just to host the event, is the nationals itself just becoming bloated to the point where you have to do something to sort of trim it down, make it more simple? Because I know Brandon's eyes lit up or almost bulged out of his head when we started talking about volunteer burnout from the nationals, and we hosted the nationals 3-4 years ago, where I think he's almost got PTSD 4 years later thinking about how much stuff was involved with that nationals, and it so many things went wrong, so many logistical problems happen when you host nationals. So is it something where we maybe need to really trim down nationals, make it a very simple thing? This is what you have to do, get the greens in order, and then kind of leave a little more onto maybe the Bulls Canada side of the things. Have a student that's maybe there, like we've talked, I think everyone's kind of brought up there talking about the summer students. Maybe have a summer student whose direct job is to essentially run it. That's sort of where I'm seeing things, is you need to really cut it down, maybe go in that direction, because I know Regina Lawn Bowling Club 5 years on, it's still probably something we don't want to host the nationals probably in the next couple of years, even, because that's a lot of work and it's the same people doing the work every time.
And the Ontario Lawn Bowling Club has done something similar, because we've had some issues trying to get clubs to host provincial championships, and just cutting out, you don't need to provide a meal. That's up to you. If your club wants to provide a meal for a cost option, that's fine, but you don't have to. And don't need to have scorekeepers if you don't want. And markers you'll need for singles and that. But like, try to get rid of all the extras, and we've no ceremony opening ceremonies except for novice. It's just taking away all that stuff. I mean, yeah, some of the, again, going back to your first time, the pomp and circumstance is nice, but do you need it to play the event? No. So trying to, again, a little bit, I don't want to say this in a negative way, but trim the fat and make it more manageable, and where clubs would be more willing. Because I know, like you just said, that size of a document, that's a complete turnoff right away. I think that's what, again, talking about my idea that Brandon then kind of also touched on, about having somebody there to actually witness what's going on, I think makes it a lot less overwhelming. I think you see, oh, well, you can get away with doing this, or that's not really as bad as, because I know I'm sure you've read things before where in the contract or in something, you got to do this, and then you're like, really? And you think, but then if you actually saw it in practical everyday use, it's not nearly that bad.
Yeah, 100%. Like when I think of seeing Rob in the chat there, and I know we had the same thing there with the junior nationals. It helps so much if you have someone on the planning committees for these who have actually experienced these events, because then you get a little bit of the idea of the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like I'm sure all of us have gone to events, and automatically we see something and it's like, next time we get to host this thing, we're not doing that. Or I'm sure there's some stuff that like, say, like when we hosted the juniors, that I'm sure that when they brought it to Manitoba, or when they were out at Wandafuka in BC, that they brought into the event that they learned from us too. It's passing on that knowledge base, because you only get one nationals in each of these disciplines a year.
Well, I know off the top of my head from when Regina hosted, there's a few things that kind of stand out to me as issue, like small things that I know we as a committee were panicking over a bit, trying to find volunteers for it, like transportation from the hotel back and forth to the club. It's either extremely expensive for the club to supply like a bus to take people back and forth, or organize taxis or volunteers to drive people back and forth. Again, airport pickup and drop off is another really big one. Is it necessarily like finding volunteers who are okay to drive out to the airport, pick people up, bring them back to the hotel, and vice versa? They're all things that the more that you have to worry about, the more intimidating it is. Is it like it's nice to know that there's going to be somebody there to pick you up at the airport. I know if I was told that I have to grab a taxi and get to the airport, that would be just fine with me. So
well, it's Codswallop. You know, it's an adults championship. It's not an under sevens. So you know, my God, you know, people can fly in when they want to fly in, or drive in when they want to drive in, and get to the hotel yourselves. My giddy aunt. For a club to have to organise all of that is just nonsense, quite frankly.
And like what Derek said there, like, yeah, like I agree. But also, and I don't want to make this sound like Regina had it easy, but there's an airport right in Regina. Like, what happens when Burlington hosted? There's not an airport in Burlington. That's a lot more complicated. Kitchener has a small airport, or in Waterloo, regional Waterloo, but realistically, it doesn't have an airport that's connected to everywhere. So that right away, if you're not in a city that has like a airport that's well connected around to different communities and large communities in Canada, that's another, just like, if you have to provide transportation in the airport, that's probably right away, well, we can't do that, I guess we're not bidding.
Yeah, and that's one of the things on the transportation side that is absolutely massive. And of course, I can speak to this individually, being that in Atlanta, Canada, there is only one club where we have more than one green. So automatically, the second that you get two clubs hosting one event, say an event like the Canadians, and the scheduling for transportation to go from potentially club to club, or setting up some going on one club on one day, some on another, it just gets nasty.
Yeah.
Look, to attract clubs, we're going to have to say that whether it's Calgary Lawn or Regina or whoever it may be, say, listen, you know, we want to do nationals because we make $50,000 out of it in the week. So that, like in Alberta, we do casinos over a few nights where we get something, you know, around 65 grand every 18 months. And I know other provinces are different, but that's how Alberta is. And so, you know, if a nationals was said, well, okay, here's the nationals, you get all the revenue. You get it all, you know, whatever it is, you know, whatever the entry fees may be per province, whatever kickbacks you can get from hotels, whatever, you know, all the drink sales, you know, and I know from Burlington that I bought Michael a can of beer and he never bought me one back. But, you know, so, you know, it's got to be a club board sits down and goes, well, gee whiz, you know, listen, we're struggling a bit for revenue this year, it looks like. If we say we do the nationals next year, that means 50 grand in our pocket, or whatever it may be. You know, well, hell, let's do it. And then you got people that are motivated to put on a real good one, so that if they put their hand up again to say, well, gee whiz, you know, 50 grand a year we could get out of doing nationals. Now, we can't do it every year, but let's put our hand up for every third year or whatever it may be. Yeah. And hopefully there's some competition in regard to other clubs see that, well, gee whiz, you know, if you know, we put this on, you know, 50 grand helps us for 2 years of greenkeeper costs or whatever it may be, you know. So I think that's a stage we've got to try and get to somehow.
And just jumping in with going back to kind of getting things back to the clubs and not having many who are willing to host. That's one. I'm on the BCB development committee, so I was part of the process that selected the clubs we have for nationals next year. So I'm not going to comment on, because that hasn't been publicly released, who's hosting what. But part of because we were desperate kind of for clubs to bid, was it wasn't a requirement necessarily any one thing like transportation from the airport, but asking, can you provide this? And obviously if you could, that was looked upon favorably, but if you couldn't, then that was that. And we looked at the bids as a whole, with all the different, with greens, average green speed, all condition, all those, which was very important, and all those different things to make our decisions.
Yeah, the point I was just going to bring up there with what Derek said, and I 100% agree with it, is not just the financial side of it, of having money in the bank, it's a legacy of the event. because like after we got done with juniors, we had a lot of money in the bank. But what we did was we wanted to make take some of that money from it and put it into something that the club would be able to utilize for years to come. Like we had like brand new mats and jacks, which is something very simple. We had a full flagpole set. That's a surprising amount of money. If anybody's ever seen how much flagpoles cost, it is insane. It's just creating those ways of making it that the benefit of hosting a championship isn't just numbers on a balance sheet. It's something actually tangible that members will benefit for years to come.
You know, if you look at Australian bowls, which is probably 30 years ahead of Canada, I can probably say. You know, people tender to get the championships because it means so much revenue to them. You know, people coming in. Obviously, there's bigger crowds watching. You know, clubs have got slot machines, etc. So it's a big thing. Now we're a long way from that, obviously, but you know, like the Gold Coast without World Championships, Commonwealth Games, you know, Premier Leagues, all those, you know, the Australian Open, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, it would hurt them beyond hurt, you know, and that's why they really tender and chase these things.
Yeah,
You
and
know, you've got to try and get to a similar situation.
Yeah, and jumping into that a bit more, we have a couple members at our club who are members of the Ingersoll Curling Club, which hosted like the 2015 Ontario Tanker to get to the Briar, which is a big event again in Ontario because of the size. And they host that. Ingersoll doesn't have an appropriate rink to host that, but they hosted in Dorchester, which has a couple thousand seats in that rink. And I know it was a 6-digit. I forget how much we talked about, how much money they made. They said it was a ton of work, but it was like a 6-digit figure that they made for the week. And I mean, that covers a ton of expenses around. And again, that club that size could not do that every year because you would have volunteer burnout. And they said that it was that much work. You'd never even try to do that. But like once in a generation or once every 10 years, depending on the size of your club, or if you're a bigger club, maybe you take something on once every 4 years or something. Yeah, like that's something you need to look at. I think that's comes back to clubs with long-term planning too, and what your goals are and what are you trying to achieve.
So I think we're all in agreement that there's a ton of stuff that makes hosting the Canadians very difficult and overwhelming for people, especially those that don't have any background in it, don't know what's going on. You know, how much am I going to have to put into it? How many volunteers do I need? What's it going to cost, et cetera, et cetera. And there's no real shining the light on the benefits. I know for my club that hosted it in conjunction with Burlington the final year, we were looking at possibly doing it again, and it wasn't for anything other than it was a money grab for us, like a big income for the club. We were able to upgrade a bunch of stuff in the club. We were able to work with the city to do a bunch of stuff to the club as well, and we want to keep that rolling. You know, can we get new things? Can we upgrade? Can we do stuff to the greens that'll just make our club better and better and better and better as we go along? And you know, hopefully the membership will support us in doing that, because in the end it should benefit them as well. But it's such a tough sell, because not only are you giving up your greens, but people have to work, and some people just want to come pay their membership and play. They don't want to have to do all this volunteer stuff, right? They just want to play the game.
Yeah, but going further what Darryl said, yeah, like if you can, like in Kitchener, if Heritage hosts the singles there in 2019, if you then kind of do this, not again annually, but regularly hosting big events, all of a sudden it should in your local community get your club or on the map. Like it should be like, oh, we like people in town. Oh yeah, the lawn bowling club. Yeah, they host a lot of big things. They might know nothing else about the club. They might know nothing about the game, but they know that this is actually an important thing in our town. People go here all the time and do this, and they host national events, and that's that's even a good spot. I mean, it'd be nice those people came up and tried the game, but it's nice to have they know it's a pillar in the community. So if you ever did have issues, people would be like, oh, well, we should help that club out because they've done all these great things over the years. And then you just build up that goodwill and notoriety, I guess, is the way to put it.
Yeah, that's where Derek, when we hosted the juniors and under 25s, like we only hosted one national event. There with that, and as well we hosted senior triples in 2016. But with juniors in 2017, I worked my rear end off when it came to the PR and media coverage there to get it that if we were able to get the word out to local reporters and tell that story of these young people breaking in the case of that event, breaking the stereotype of this sport and achieving great things in athletic competition. Like we ended up, and this is a funny story. I got to bring this one up. We were at the host hotel for the juniors at like 10 o'clock at night, down by a pool, just chatting. On my way out, I get a phone call. It's Global News. One of the reporters for Global, and it's like, heard you're hosting the junior and under 25 national lawn bowling championship. Tell me about it. And like I'm pitching this story up the yin yang to him in the middle of the hotel parking lot in the middle of an industrial park at like 10 o'clock at night. What do you know? They send a film crew the next day. It's the lead story at 6 o'clock and 11 o'clock the next day. And we probably had one of the biggest crowds there that I've probably ever seen for the youth nationals in the finals there, watching Carter and Owen play for that gold medal.
I think there's a lot to be said for what can be taken away from the Canadians if you're willing to do the work and if you're willing to put yourself out there. But it's still a tough sell. I wanted to kind of shift away from the hosting aspect. I think we've covered that quite a bit, but I'll throw this out to Mike Pituley. I don't think he has any opinions. What do you think about the format and the marketability and the fact that we stream it, but do we have anybody but the hardcores watching? I don't know.
Yeah, our format is garbage, so we'll get that out there quick. The games are way too long. There's lots of problems with the streaming of it in general is just not enjoyable just because you're going to have to, I guess when Regina hosted it, I was helping out with that a little bit with Brandon and me. And to get the cameras each end, a person on each camera, you only get one rink. You probably can only do it on an end rink. So it's not an easy thing with our current format. I think you have to definitely move to a more TV-friendly format if people will want that to happen, because the more TV-friendly formats, you probably are going to go into shorter games. You're going to go into, I guess, more luck swinging games where someone makes one really nice lucky shot. They're probably going to win a match type of thing. So I don't know if people are overly going to be friendly with changing to a massive format change, but I think you almost have to for the TV side of things, because if you're streaming it, if you can do it on a middle rink where a marker puts a GoPro on their chest and you get essentially right there direct footage from the GoPro right in front of the head, you're going to get great footage. But it's, again, you're changing format, you're changing the way that lawn bowling thinks. And I think that's going to be kind of a big problem, is getting people to change the way they think or be open to new ideas. So I could keep going all day, but I would love to hear someone else's opinion on a format change, potentially changing what we do with the Canadians.
Yeah, that is definitely the big issue there, because number one, yeah, like the games are too long, like especially when you think of trying to, like you look at curling, for example, where curling, they're trying to fit into essentially hour and a half, hour 45 time slot, really, when it comes to like the stuff you're seeing on like Sportsnet. And like now they're looking at now the Briar for curling going from 10 ends to 8 ends potentially in the future, or even timed stuff. It gets all nutty with that. So it's like when you think of our games, 18 ends, or in the case of ours, I guess we have time limit now, 2.5 hours. I think it is now. It's insane. It is long, and fortunately, we at least and I know there may be a few viewers that send me hate mail afterwards for saying this, but I think the respot has kind of helped a little bit. I think it has. Hate me for it. I'm fine.
I'll get Ryan Bester to email you about that.
There are intricacies about that, but it is what it is. On the streaming side there, I think one of the things that I remember, I don't know if it was on the actual BCB stream or whether it was the local TV network that did it, but I remember when Derek and Mike were playing against each other in the final, the pairs, they had the boom camera. And like that provides some amazing angles there for that type of stuff. Unfortunately for us, it costs a lot of money to have a boom camera and a boom operator for said camera. So as a result, it makes it a bit challenging to have that every single time. But it's amazing.
It put me off my game as well.
I may be the person who kind of disagrees with this. I mean, it depends what the goal of the Canadian Championships is, to find the best team. Because if it is, then to me, that's playing championship games with 18 ends of pairs, 16 ends of fours. And it's not going to be this nice short little thing. Like, it's going to be 16 ends to settle this and over. And I'm personally a fan of I like the full round. I don't think you necessarily need to have a gold medal and bronze medal game if you have your full round robin. You've played your full round, unless this is where I disagree with some people and World Bowls, where I do like settling it on the green. So if you have three people like we did in fours, I know there was ties in the pairs too. Not for Derek would have been gold medalist, but we won't talk about that. But in the fours, there's a three-way tie for first. Then you need to have some format where you settle that in games on the green. And then you've already determined who your medalists are in that case. It's just what medal they're going to get. But you've played every team. You don't need to play another medal game against them. To me, that's the way. Like, I was looking into this kind of stuff. I was looking at one time about who's hosted different World Bowls events over the years, and I saw that Willowdale hosted the women's in '81. And I was just looking at some of the results. Full 17 game round robin against every team, and that was the medals, first, second, third after that. And to me, that's the way to sell it. You've played every team. Everyone's done the same thing. Yes, you might have had a green that would have been advantageous to one, or rink advantageous to one team over another, but that should hopefully balance itself out over the course of especially 17 games, but even 9 games at the Canadian.
See, Darryl, you may know, I don't know, or even Mike, you might know, very learned gentleman on this, out of this group, but as a member of World Bowls that Canada is there, and or money coming from Sport Canada, are there certain rules or that we must do this with the national championship? Or, like World Bowl says you must have a fours and a pairs, or is it mute talking that we go 5-a-side and rah?
No, I think the discussion could be had. They made the changes to put in the triples, take out the triples. We kind of switched up how things were done. I think countries tend to model a little closer to, say, World Bowls or Commonwealth Games, because it is that preparation. You want to see, like, can these people perform at that level in Canada before they hit the national stage and do the same format. That's kind of how the Canadian Championships, I think, have been molded to liken like a World Bowls format that way. I kind of wanted to comment on Mike's as well. Dave Anderson in the comment said he disagrees with Michael. Streaming in other countries do well with a poor format. I guess I want to throw it out to you guys. Is it? I like having a traditional format. I don't like having a traditional format to stream necessarily, but is there a place for another level of competition across Canada, maybe not Canadians, that is that fast-paced, hardcore, good for casual audiences possibly? Because I don't think the Canadian Championships in its current format is going to pull in the casual audience the way we want it to. unless you're a casual person that knows, say, a Derek Dillon that's going in and I want to see him play.
Well, this could be one of those things that falls in line with the open types of tournaments that Derek was talking about earlier, where you could have an open tournament that was a more of a fast-paced type deal, where it's maybe a different format and makes it a little bit easier and more watchable for people to watch if they wanted to. And not only that, it adds to that lack of competitive play that we have around. We can get more play in over the course of our season, and maybe potentially bring people that normally wouldn't be able to go to nationals into a new event or into a new format. So I think there is potential for making a more streamable format, but it's just whether or not people would end up coming to that or even watching. So you have to think about it, whether or not it's going to be receptive to both the players and to the people who would be viewing it.
Well, go ahead. Go ahead, John.
The thing I was going to say there, and I see Dave Anderson and Rob Gallipo kind of jumped up ahead of me in the chat, because I was literally just about to say it. Stuff like the Phoenix Championship, which was excellent there with that fast-paced type format. Is it going to be something like that, which is your ultra short stuff? Or even stuff as similar as, I know Bulls Australia had significant success with a format similar to the Bulls Premier League, where they had the BPL Cup, which that one, if I remember correctly, I'd seen a press release recently for that. It was, even with COVID, it was their most successful year of that championship yet. They had, I think, 786 teams competing across Australia to get to the national finals at Moema in March. So, like, looking at maybe another level where it is that shorter, condensed format, while still keeping that championship excitement of the majors, which is like, I can see what Derek says about that championship prestige of that 18 ends pairs, 16 ends fours, and that 21 shots up.
One sport that's done this pretty successfully, though again I like the original, but to watch myself, but is rugby with rugby sevens. Like, they've went and shortened that up, and it's basically it turns it into like usually a rugby sevens tournament is about 2 days long, and you play like short, quick games against it. And you have like a playoff and a final, and it got itself into the Olympics doing that. And it gives countries that are not as big, like Fiji, they've won the 2 gold medals for the men so far. And like, if you're playing, and Fiji's still a good country, like competitively from a full 15 aside rugby format, but I don't think they're going to win gold medals in that format. You see a New Zealand or a South Africa or something probably come through on that. But yeah, that's worked well for them in getting that viewership, and people probably watch that at the Olympics who don't watch rugby any other time. So,
Dave Anderson actually said cricket did the same thing.
Yeah, with 2020.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
How many days does the cricket? Derek, maybe you know that, Derek Dillon. You watch cricket at all?
Well, yeah, it depends. It depends what you're talking about. You know, there's the tournaments can go for a couple of weeks. So if it's a one day, now you have T20 as well. So yeah, there's all sorts of different games. But yes, it's all about speeding things up, getting a result, and it's all about designing a format around TV coverage. So, you know, and that's what's happened with the BPL, UBC, et cetera, in Australia and stuff. So, you know, I think that's probably for bowls in Canada, if we're going to have another national type event, then it's got to have to be something different. Maybe you keep the nationals as they are, or with some tweaks or what have you. But, you know, there's another open event that competitive players across Canada can satisfy their thirst and say, well, okay, you know, we have to do this all ourselves. And for example, let's say it's the Alberta Premier League grows to the Canadian Premier League. You know, so it's 5-a-side. You know, it's a 1 hour game and then a 1 hour game. You know, different so you play singles, pairs, triples, fours, but you get 5 guys together or a mixed team or whatever. We had mixed teams, and you could say, well, okay, listen, we're going to enter this in Alberta or Saskatchewan or whatever it may be, wherever you're at, and so, well, okay, I can get through to a national event on this. Now I've got to look after my own costs, but I've got the 5 people in my team that understand that. Wherever the nationals are, well, okay, we're in Alberta. Yes, it's going to be, the nationals are going to be in Ontario. That's fine. Okay, we'll all, it's all our own costs. We know that, but the 5 of us, we're going to get a house together. We'll get 1 car together. So the costs are sort of spread a bit, and the competitive player won't necessarily think about the cost too much, because in its event they want to play in to satisfy the competitive nature, and it's an event they want to win, and it's a national event that they want to win. And yes, I'm prepared to take a week off work to go to nationals for or whatever it may be, a few days, and I'm prepared to bear the costs and that for that. So I think we can have another national event, and I think we can have it that players who enter fully know that the costs are their own. There may be prize money at the end, but once again, the host club has got to make some money. Is the key. But I think there is room, because at the moment, if you're a competitive player, I sometimes think about Cameron Lafreniere, for example. That if you don't make it in the fours or the pairs provincially, there's 2 weekends, you're done. Where's the competition coming from now? It's the same with Greg Wilson, for example, in Alberta. Our national players, current national players, that if they miss out on 2 weekends out of a 52-week year, that's it. There is no competition outside of that, unless they decide to go to Phoenix for the winter or something like that. So, competition, I keep drumming it in, there's just not enough competition in Canada.
I know, like, another really interesting concept too is being able to make a team and go to a large-scale national event with players across the country, not just pulling from your own province. That's, if you had both. I like the idea of representing my province, going to the nationals, playing against other provinces. I like that. But being able to also create teams that come with players that are across the country, I think it's a really good way to get people interested.
That's good.
Yeah, 100%. That's like with the Australian Open, that was the biggest thing that made me so excited about going down there to play in the AO, because like the first year I was the only Canadian on my team, and I was playing with like 2 guys from a rural town outside Sydney, and then 1 from Canberra. So like we would never have gotten the opportunity to play together if it wasn't for playing in a major open championship like the Australian Open. I do see it could be a possibility of maybe we somehow find a way to resurrect the Canadian Open after they last held it, I believe, 2001 in the Toronto area, if I remember correctly. I think that would be exciting there if that was ever a possibility.
So I wanna throw this back to the hard ass Michael Pituley up there. What do you think about the comments that were made? Do you think there's a room for the same old traditional long format Canadians to get to the gold medal, where other than singles it might not lead anywhere else? It's just kind of that prestige, and then have maybe a second where it's like a Canada wide open 5-man team. You put them all together from the people that you like or and then have it out that way.
I would mirror what Derek's point was, where if you're looking for the best team and you want to find out who's the best players in the country, you got to stick with a similar format to what we currently have, sort of the longer games, play the full round robin, or playing with the medal rounds, things like we have right now. Maybe slight additions or subtractions make it more attractive as an event wise, but definitely there's room for other events, either invitational, opens, whatever it might be, some sort of a major scale event. As the other Derek sort of said, there's essentially a lack of events that you can play in Canada. You kind of have to go and seek something out or travel to go do something. And I know the hunger is there, especially amongst the very competitive players. So we've kicked around the ball a few times, Darryl, me and you, with the Canadian Bowler Invitational. So I think all y'all keep your eyes open, because there's probably going to be a Canadian Bowler specific tournament sometime in the immediate future, where we've got a lot of ideas we want to try out format wise specifically. So keep your eyes open, because there could be some fun with that in the immediate future.
Shameless plug.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the idea. Rob Gallipo's in the chat. He went straight for doing the Phoenix Championship. You know, the UBC format. Really short games. Tried to get us to stream it. And we got a lot of feedback that was enjoyable to watch. You know, it was quick. It was, you know, you didn't miss much. If you wanted to skip a game, it wasn't that long. Really neat format, something unique, and I think it's something that could be expanded to other provinces, where if someone wanted to pick up and do a satellite competition to actually build it into a nationwide event, that's a possibility, and it's really exciting to think that that might happen. And you hope that maybe there's some other ambitious people, like Mike and Luke have been kind of kicking around trying to do our own kind of thing. Maybe there's someone that will take up the cause and try to do that big 5-man 5-woman tournament, maybe even mixed, where you just put the best 5 people you can together and battle it out for that top spot or a big prize. I think there's some kind of exciting possibilities out there if we really want to do it. It's just who's going to do it, I guess.
Yeah. With this isn't the new real short format, but going back to competition and trying to create something other than national championships that you have, where somebody from anywhere in Canada can kind of get out there, and even the Americans, assuming we get everything straightened out at the border. I guess we have kind of getting close, but like next summer, if WOBA's going on, we're going to run a 2-day men's pairs tournament here in Woodstock with some big prize money out there, like we were planning to do before COVID hit. And then, so that's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, WOBA. Wednesday, Thursday, you have our men's pairs tournament. Then Saturday, you get to Milton, they got a skins game going on there. So that's a full week of bowls, and you can put that in your calendar if you wanted to play, because it's not like there's pre-qualification to get here. Like you'd be like, oh, I can schedule that week off during the summer because I'm going to put my entries in to WOBA, to Woodstock, to Milton. If you can get, assuming you can get entries to all those. And then of course they have Bill Becker the day before the men's pairs before WOBA starts.
Well, I guess shameless plug to WOBA week there for next year. But great event. I can't agree more. It's a great event if you ever want to travel to it. But I guess looking at it, Darryl, we've been going for over an hour, pretty long, good conversation here. And I think Derek's disappeared, so he might have went to the pub and just left early. I'm not sure.
I think it might be that McDonald's Wi-Fi that he's on. I don't know.
So I guess, do we want to wrap this up, Darryl?
I think so. Guys, thank you so much for coming and doing this. I know we had the technical difficulties, which I'm famous for, at the beginning of the show, but thanks for sticking around. Thanks for having such great conversation on the Canadians. I know we probably didn't solve all the world's problems, but hopefully we threw out enough ideas and enough conversation to get not only you guys, but our viewers to think about what the future holds for Bulls and where we can go with formats, with hosting, what the pros and cons are of doing it. So really great conversation, and thank you all for being a part of that. So to my co-hosts, Mike Pituley, John Siteman, Derek Dillon, Derek Mckay, Carter Watson, and Brandon Watson, thanks everybody for watching. Thanks for being part of the show. And with that, may all your Bulls be touchers.